Hey, I'm Paul Stevenson, and this is episode 130 of VRP Rocks, the ultimate classic rock podcast that says that my music is better than yours. Don't forget to subscribe to VRP Rocks on your favorite podcast app right now. Probably the one you're using makes sense, so you never miss a single episode. They drop every Monday. Now, today I'm thrilled to be joined by a rock star whose band carved their place in classic rock history. Zebra, led by Randy Jackson, burst onto the scene with their self-titled debut album in 1983. It featured hits like Tell Me What You Want and Who's Behind the Door. The record went gold and earned them a devoted following, and their music continues to resonate with fans of powerful melodies. Now, before we get to the interview, if you're listening on Spotify right now, you can actually watch this podcast as a video. Apparently, it's the future, so I'm giving it a go. I don't think any other podcast apps support this yet, but if you would like to watch me in my nice new studio, then you can always head over to YouTube. The VRP Rocks YouTube channel has nearly 25,000 subscribers on there, over 7.5 million views as well. It's growing all the time, so make sure you go over to YouTube and hit subscribe for more classic rock content on there. But anyway, back to today's guest then, Randy from Zebra. They're going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary next year, and Randy talks about the band's incredible journey, signing with Atlantic Records, touring with big names like Sammy Hagar and Cheap Trick, and that difficult second album. Plus, there's plans for a 2025 anniversary tour and a brand new album as well. We also dive into stories from his time with Jefferson Airplane and what it meant to him to be part of rock and roll history. So get ready for a fantastic conversation. Here's my chat with Randy Jackson of Zebra.
It's great to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries at all. I've got an awful lot to get through and a lot of exciting new stuff to talk about as well. But forgive me if we don't go back to the very beginning, because obviously you guys started in New Orleans and that's where you're from. But it was the move to New York, wasn't it, that really got you traction? So why did you choose New York? Because obviously the scene was big there. It was obviously big in Los Angeles. There's a few other places you could have gone to as well in America at that time. So what was it about the New York scene that resonated with you and resonated with the band so much?
Well, I think we met a band named the Good Rats, called the Good Rats, back when we were first starting out. And they were from New York, and they were touring at the time. They had an album out, and we asked them, what do you guys think? And they said, listen, we're from there, but it's a really, really great scene in New York. And plus we knew somebody in New York. That really helped,
that helps,
right?
Yeah.
Because it was either going to be New York or LA, like you said. And so that's why we went to New York. We had, a little connection and a little boost from the Good Rats to get us up here.
And there's a lot of great bands around at that time in New York, wasn't there? So what can you remember from that early scene, those early gigs, and who you were playing with and alongside and rubbing shoulders with?
Well, I remember that one thing I do remember is that our really only exposure to a New York rock band was Kiss, and we hadn't, that was on TV at that point, and the New York Dolls in New Orleans. So we're thinking that's what New York is all about, And we get up to Long Island and we do our first gig, and we're playing with a band called Rat Race Choir. We're opening up for them, and they are not either Kiss or the New York Dolls. These guys are from another stratosphere. They're playing progressive rock. It's just one of the most monstrous bands I've seen in my life. And I'm going, oh, okay, I get it now. Welcome to New York, and that was it. It was like, all of a sudden we realized, your view is a little small. So we had to kind of open our vision a little bit and realize, that it was going to be quite of an experience. And it really was.
And slightly different to New Orleans as well. But obviously you guys were inducted into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. So you certainly left a lasting impression there. So how did you think you managed to build such a strong and loyal fan?
How we did it was just getting ourselves up here and mixing the original songs we had with the covers that we were doing at the time. Mm-hmm. We were playing songs by about 50 different bands, covers, and we had probably about 10 originals when we first came up. But we wouldn't really announce. That was one thing we didn't do. We didn't announce this is our song now, and everybody can walk out, but we would just play the songs. And then we could kind of tell which songs were good or bad by who asked about them afterwards. We would just play the song and then maybe do a cover song. And so the fans really were instrumental in us picking the songs that we continued to do. And I think just playing and just being fortunate, we were a three-piece band. There really wasn't another three-piece band in New York at the time, when we first came up. And so we were filling a kind of a niche in Long Island and around the tri-state area. Twisted Sister was playing, so we weren't going to compete with them. The Rat Race Choir, which was like, I guess you could call them the Yes of New York at that point, or the UK of New York. And you had a bunch of other acts that were like doing different things. There were some that were doing like show rock, like Peter Gabriel kind of a show, where it was all theatrical. And there was a lot, but it was mainly cover bands and not tribute bands, because everybody was at that time still playing, different covers, and so we got work because of the covers that we did, but we were able to get our original songs out there in the middle. And a lot of club owners didn't want you to play originals. So if you were announcing your originals, you'd be scolded. But the club owners didn't know that we were playing them because we weren't saying it, People just picked up on it eventually. We just start the song. And we did that with a lot of songs anyway. So that worked out for us.
It certainly did work out for you, and people did pick up on those songs, and especially Atlantic Records. I mean, let's be honest, storied, legendary, iconic name in music, and you guys were signed to that label. So how did that happen? How did that all come about? Can you remember the sequence of events for that?
Well, the demo that we originally made was shopped to Atlantic in like 1979, and they rejected it. It was with a manager we had. His name was Phil Basile. He had a lot of connections. He had managed the Vanilla Fudge when they came out. And so he had connections with Atlantic and was able to get it in there. But they told him that the music was dated, that if he'd have come there 10 years earlier, we would have been signed right away, but that music was changing. And, that was what he got. So what happened was the fans, kept coming to see us, wanted the music. A DJ in New York on Long Island at a radio station called WBAB loved the band. And he started playing the demos on air. And back then you could actually program a station, and he was doing that. So he eventually put our songs into regular rotation at the station, and they became the most requested songs at the station for a lot of reasons. People liked them, but then they couldn't go out and buy them anywhere. This is back in that day. And so there was a gentleman named Jason Flom who was starting at Atlantic Records, and he went to WBAB. He was sent there to promote another group, and Bob Buckman, who was the program director at WBAB, spoke to him. And in their conversation, he mentioned, "Have you heard of this band Zebra?" And then he showed him the statistics on the requests and stuff, and showed him that we were up there with, and there were the top 10 was Zebra, and all the other bands I think at that point were Atlantic artists. It was either AC/DC or Zeppelin at that time, and so Jason was like, "What? You got to be kidding me!" So he went back, and he fortunately had a connection directly to the new president of Atlantic Records, Doug Morris. And so he went right into Doug's office and gave him the tape. And from what I understand, Doug took the tape. He was going to listen to it. He went into his car. He's a car service, and they're taking him back to his house. And he puts the tape in while he's in the back. Back then, it's a cassette tape. And he listens. And the first song that's on the demo tape is "Who's Behind the Door?" And if you know that song, you know that there's a long, long acoustic guitar intro. Nothing happens. It didn't get into the hook right away, in other words. So he's listening to the song, and it's too long. They're too long to the hook. So he ejects it. And that radio happens to be tuned into WBAB, and they just happen to be playing that song at that moment.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? And so he's like he can tell right away it's the same song. So he puts the tape back in, and then he ejects it again. And then, wow, I'm going to listen to this whole song now because it's on the radio. And so he listens to the whole song. And at the end of it, the DJ says that's the most requested song at the station for the last however long, Who's Behind the Door by Zebra. But we didn't find this out, that part of the story, till years later. Because what happened was all of a sudden there was a frantic search for how do we get in touch with this Zebra band. And then they brought us into Atlantic Records, and, it's brilliant. They're just saying it's just brilliant, and whatever. And that was great. We loved that, but the story is just so bizarre. It's like, how lucky could you get, So that's how it happened.
Fantastic story indeed. So in terms of that first record then, I mean, you guys have been together for, was it 8-10 years or something like that before the album came out. So you definitely earned your stripes. So what was it like when that album did come out and it did sell big and it eventually went gold?
Yeah, it was really exciting. We knew we were going to sell a lot of records right away, and we did. We sold 75,000 copies in 2 weeks with no airplay. With nobody in the band having ever been on a record before, a commercial record. Atlantic was excited, and we were certainly excited. So we're thinking, okay, they're going to promote this thing, and this is going to really get big, But it didn't work like that. What happened was Atlantic wanted to see if they knew we had fans that were going to buy the record anyway, but they wanted to see if radio alone could sell records, because that's where it was back then. So it took them getting airplay in other parts of the country, and they did. They pushed the band really well with the A&R people, and it was a station in St. Louis that was playing the song "Who's Behind the Door," and it was KSHE, was called KSHE in St. Louis. They started playing "Who's Behind the Door," and from what I got a call from Jason Flom, who was the A&R guy at Atlantic. He goes, I think we're doing good. I said, really? What's going on? He says, we sold 7 records. We sold 7 records in St. Louis, and they're legitimate records. They weren't, bought by your friends or anything. They bought it because of the thing. So I think it's looking good. That was a positive thing to them. Not 75,000, 7, Yeah. And so from there, they knew it could work there. It could work other places. And finally, the song was getting played all over the country, And it was exciting. And Atlantic brought us back in to do a video for the song. And, videos were pretty new back then.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say that is kind of early MTV era. That is early kind of video era for music. And so how did that feel then, being put in front of the cameras to record something like that?
Well, it was, I guess, because MTV was so new, we didn't have any, free judgment on what what it should be, or this, that, or the other. And we kind of flew in there and just let the directors, kind of do what they wanted. If as long as they didn't stray too far from what the song was about. And the directors of the first couple of videos did good jobs. I mean, I think "Who's Behind the Door" was closer to what the song was about, and "Tell Me What You Want" was just out of this world crazy. The guy was just, I forget what his name was. He was an understudy of Federico Fellini. So he was trying to do a Fellini thing with the Zebra song, And so when you see all these crazy visuals, that's where that came from,
Fantastic. And we've mentioned "Who's Behind the Door" a few times there. Obviously, a big hit for you guys. Did you kind of expect it, when you were putting it together, did you expect it to be as big as it actually became?
No, I didn't expect it. I thought it could be. But I was just happy that I had written the song, and whether it became the song or not, I always just tried to write songs that I knew maybe I could be playing in 10 years, in 20 years, and it still would be okay, because the songs we learned as covers early on were songs that we thought would last a long time, so we didn't have to learn any other ones. It was kind of like lazy selection. But that was, I kind of had a feel for what would last, and I thought I did anyway. And obviously at this point, proof's in the pudding. So the song's still being played, and we're still touring. So I knock on my lucky wood, that it
You
worked
certainly did
out that
something
well.
right there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So in terms of the success on that first record, did you feel pressure when it came to the second one? Because people often say that you've got your whole life, haven't you, to write and get ready for the first album. But the second album comes with the pressure of the success. You've got the tours, you've got the promotion, you've got everything else that's going around it. So did you feel the pressure for the second record?
Well, once they told us we had to do a second record and how quick it had to be, yeah, it became a little crazy and frantic because although I had a lot of material, I had not been doing the right thing on the first tour. We toured with, you know, first tour was Cheap Trick and Loverboy, first tour. And we had not stopped doing what we were doing when we were just doing the club scene. We were partying.
Yeah.
And I wasn't spending time writing as much as I should have been for that record, for the next record. And it took that whole experience for me to realize I got that you need time to write. You got to stop partying, because it takes time to party, as much as you might love it. And so I was kind of stuck. And so here we are. We had some songs that had never gone on that didn't make it on the first record, like Wait Until the Summer's Gone and Bears. There were pieces of other songs that I was able to throw together and make songs out of. And we took one of Felix's songs from a band that he and I were in before Zebra that he had written called Little Things, and we put it on the record. And at the end of the day, I was still proud of the record, but it was kind of a hodgepodge of different ideas. It was like, what are they doing? This sounds like the 1940s, jazz band or something, and then the next one would be like this big ethereal but no more thing. And it was like it wasn't really a cohesive group of songs. And but we got through it, and and it just didn't do what it was supposed to do, or what we wanted it to. And one of the first problem with that one was that we sent the single "Wait Until the Summer's Gone" out to radio before the record was released, and they're expecting "Tell Me What You Want" or "Who's Behind the Door" or something like that, and this is like completely different. This is heavier. Plus, they couldn't really hear the vocal or understand the vocal at all. And that was a big complaint that the stations had. So in re-listening back to it, Jack Douglas and I listened with fresher ears and said, you really can't hear the vocal hardly at all. And so we rushed back into the studio. I did a different vocal, but not for a remix now. This is a different vocal that we just put on top of the 2-track and made it louder and rushed it right back out to the stations. But too late. It's like, you bring here, how do you like my apple pie? And they take a taste and they go, not too good. And but wait a minute, here, we fixed it. That's okay. That's exactly what happened. And so, it got some airplay. We did 2 great funny videos with it with Marty Callner, who was great, who by that point, he had become like the guy to do videos with. He's legendary, and he was a lot of fun to work with, and videos were great, which was encouraging. But I think we just lost it on that, that first, the airplay on the first song. And so it didn't happen. We had a chance to go to Europe at that point. Okay. And we said, no, let's stay over here and let's tour with Sammy Hagar. We got an offer to open for Sammy. And I think when looking back, if anybody asked me, what would you have done differently? I think I would have gone to Europe, because at that point it was kind of like heading downhill, and little did we know we were never really going to get a good chance financially to go to Europe again, but hindsight is, as you know.
Indeed.
And so, but anyway, that's how the record kind of came about. And that's the kind of pressure it was, pressure where you rush too fast and you make mistakes.
Indeed. You mentioned a couple of people you toured with, Sammy, you mentioned recently, and Cheap Trick and Loverboy and things like that. So obviously you toured with a lot of big acts. So did you learn from those guys on the road? You obviously did a lot of partying, but did you learn from their stage presence or anything like that? Did the band, I know you've been together for a long time and you played for a long time before that, but seeing these guys up close and personal, did you learn from the way they conducted themselves on tour?
Absolutely. I learned positive things. what to do, and I also learned what not to do, because Loverboy had been out, but they hadn't been out any longer than, not much longer than we had. And, there were situations where they might say something on stage and all of a sudden people are throwing stuff at them. And I remember they came back on stage with wearing like hard hats, to keep from getting pelted so bad. Now that wasn't when we were playing with them. That was just something that I had seen or heard of. I think they were opening up for Journey on their first tour, but I wouldn't have even known about that if we hadn't toured with Loverboy, And each band is a different thing. They all had great songs, but the way they dealt with their audiences were all different. And I think I learned from all of them. I took something from each one of them. And the one thing I really, am thankful for is that the bands we opened up for, they played music that was more like the music that I grew up with, because we were late in the game, 8 years after we got together. So we're children of the late 60s, early 70s, as far as like the rock that we grew up with as teenagers. And Loverboy and Sammy, were more, in line with that than, let's say, if we had opened up for Poison or, what I'm saying, like an 80s band. And, I enjoyed that about it. But then again, here we're an 80s band, but what kind of 80s band are we?
And you mentioned the late 60s and early 70s, the love of that music. I mean, I've got to ask you about 1989 and Kenny Aronoff giving you a call and asking you to go on tour with, well, the reunion of the legends, Jefferson Airplane. It is Grace, Marty, Paul, Yorma, and Jack, and you and Kenny on stage and touring. I mean, first of all, how did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Well, it was like a thrill for me because it was really my first experience up close with like bigger than life. I was a little kid when you started Rock Stars, and it was an original group getting back together because the Starship had been out and stuff, but this was like the original band getting back together for the first time. There was actually a keyboard player also that was on the road with us, Tim Gorman, who was phenomenal. They already had that done. And Yorma's brother was playing with them, Peter. So he was also already playing with the group, but they needed a utility guy, and what a utility guy is somebody that can do a lot of different things and do something different for each song. So I went out and played keyboards, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, background vocals. And so, I was kind of like filling in because they during rehearsal, they would just all say, we kind of need this, we kind of need that, but they can't hire individual people. So you kind of need, you don't need everybody for every song, So I was kind of that guy, but what a thrill it was. I mean, I loved it. It was getting to see a band. Now at that time, Zebra had been together for 14 years. It was getting to see a band that had broken up, had already been through probably what we'd been through, and then coming back together, and I was able to see how they were working out the things that were never going to change about each other and how they were handling each other. And it was just a whole interesting thing, and I had some preconceived notions about, like, for Yorma, for instance, Yorma's just the sweetest guy in the world, but my preconceived notion was that he'd be like more like a tougher, like a motorcycle gang kind of thing, and this is like just not knowing about him, that's all it is, just prejudice, and he just turns out to be, and always was, this wasn't based on anything I had heard. It was just my visual of him. And Grace was sober, so anything that I had heard about her was completely different. Now she's, I think she was at 50 at the time and completely mature and happy and, really to make this thing work. I think all of them were. And it was just a thrill to be there. That's all I can say.
Incredible. So how did your name come up then? How did you get the recommendation for that?
Well, my manager, Scott Ross, also, I think he managed Kenny, but he also grew up with Kenny. I think they grew up in the same time in Indiana. Yeah. And Scott had introduced me to Kenny. Now, I think Kenny knew Zebra, so he knew all this stuff. And Scott told him, this guy could do the job, and he's doing a record right now. And so he's not on the road, and he could probably like take a break and go out with you guys if you wanted him to. And so Kenny made the suggestion, and his word was gold with the band. And there I went, you know.
Fantastic stuff. And as we're talking about touring, as we said at the start, the theme next year is the 50th anniversary of Zebra. 50 years together, the three of you. It's still the same three of you as well, which is pretty incredible. I know you're going to be soon announcing the 50th anniversary special, the tour news. I know you can't say too much, but can you let us in on any kind of surprises or unique elements or what you've got planned for this tour?
Well, there's going to be a new record,
Yeah.
and that's going to be a surprise to a lot of people because I've been threatening to make a new record for the last 10 years. And I'm just the boy that cried wolf, you know, but this time we're in the middle of it right now. It was supposed to be out in December of this year, but you know, life and grandkids get in the way of it. And, but it's sounding great, and it's going to be a coherent album. It's not a rushed job, obviously, because the last one was over 20 years ago. And, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I mean, the great part is it's not just that we're together, it's that we're still playing good too. You know, I mean, our drummer, he's just as good as he ever was. And I thought he was unbelievable when we first started, but he's 73 years old now. And it's not like you're coming to like pay tribute to some guy who's just like tapping and, you know, getting through the gig. No, I mean, he is working his butt off, sweating. I mean, really, so anybody that sees us live is going to go, wow, you know, that's good, you know. I mean, not to say other people can't do this at this age, but we're doing it, you know. That's one thing I'll brag about, you know. And we're lucky enough to all still be alive, period, after 50 years, you know. I mean, just statistically saying, you know, we're lucky.
Absolutely. And given the advances in technology and the way things have changed in the music industry, how has the recording of this new album differed from what you did in the past, or how have you approached the writing for this album as well?
The writing process is more streamlined and quicker because, you know, in the past I used cassette tapes for the first three albums, and I would have to go through the tapes, and it was just a longer process to go back and review stuff. Now with the digital technology, you could have your phone linked to your computer, so everything you write is already on all your other devices. You don't have to transfer them or anything, so you can really, you know, and then you can send your lyrics with the song. And you know, if you know enough about technology, it can really be a big advantage, you know, especially when you wake up in the middle of the night, you got an idea and you want to throw it down quick. You don't have to get up and turn all the stuff on in the studio. You just pick up your phone, pick up a guitar, and just do it right there. And then it's in the studio the next morning when you get there. So the writing process is easier. Because we have taken so long between albums, each recording process has been completely different. You know, the third Zebra record was done when digital just had started to come out. And we only used it for one of the songs on the third album, and it was a 32 track Mitsubishi machine, I believe, but everything else was analog, you know, and it was really just an experiment at that point because everybody was like, okay, how is digital, blah, blah, blah. The next album was recording the drums in New Orleans with DA-88s. So if you're a tech guy, you'd know, you know, this is a Tascam format. You put in a videotape, which records audio, but digitally on it. So it's a digital audio recording. And then between the time that we did that and the time I started doing overdubs, there had been a big enough advance in the computer, being able to do on a computer by itself without it costing $1 million and having a huge Pro Tool rig, that I transferred all the drums to a computer and finished Zebra 4 at my house, and did the mixing and everything here. You know, I mean, I'm sure if we had used other facilities and stuff, it would have sounded better maybe, you know, and there's things I look back and say, but overall, you know, for just doing it at your house for the first time, I was pretty proud of it, you know. Coming to this new record, well, things have changed again. And now, you know, we don't even have to be in the same room, although it really does help. And that's the way we've been doing it. Guy set up a studio in his house where he also makes videos, drum clinic videos. And we just use the drum sounds as they are. He just sends them to me on the multi-track, and I just take it from there. We can we can edit them, we can change them, we can do anything with them now, and it's just like, you know, you kind of say, I wish it would have been like this back then, but you really had to know what you were doing back then too. It doesn't do any good if you have the technology, but you don't know how to use it. And fortunately, I kept up with it. I just happen to be a technology geek, and so knock on wood for that again.
And what can fans expect from this new record then? I mean, can you give us a glimpse into the kind of the music and songs that you're going to be bringing us?
Well, there was a song that it's going to be a combination of new stuff and really stuff that we just didn't do for some reason. There's a song particularly called Direction that we did back in the late 70s that was really, if I had to compare it to anything, it would be Rush. It was a little bit progressive. It had a lot of different licks in it. It wasn't standard by any means. And we just didn't do it. We just never recorded it. But people always asked for it. So that's going to go on the record this time. I had some leftover tracks from China Rain, the solo record I did when I went with the Jefferson Airplane. And I wrote with a whole bunch of different people and had some great, great songs that never got on the China Rain record, only because they didn't sound like China Rain. But they did sound like Zebra. Zebra could do them and it would really work. So we're going to be doing some of those. And then there's other new material that we're doing that is a little, again, I can't say it's going to be a little bit different or expected. If you know Zebra, you'll listen to this and go, "Oh, right, I get it. I know why they did this," but it's not going to sound like any particular song. And I'm excited about it. I mean, I just wrote a new song this morning for it, that's gonna be on the record. I got inspired, or I was sent into some sort of mania by the election over here, and that's when your creativity comes in, whether it's up or down. Stuff comes out of it. You start thinking a lot. Under stress. So. It was good. And I woke up and I just put it right down. Like I was telling pick up the phone, get the guitar, just sit there and just go for it. So I think it'll definitely be on the record. We've got 10 songs that were definitely going on the record. Wanted to have like 11 or 12. And because we know it's not going to come out this year, we're going to release a couple of them before the end of the year. Okay. And then, and when we're really set with the package, get it out for the 50th anniversary.
And have you got an idea for a name yet? Has that all been decided, or are you still thinking?
Nothing's been decided. I'm kind of the mind, don't decide until the last second. Keep your ideas there, but you don't have to just lock yourself in to anything for any reason, anything in life. That's just kind of my philosophy. I'm the latest one to the airport. I'm always that guy that you're like yelling at, why can't you get here earlier? But it works for Zebra, and for a long time we didn't even have set lists on stage because there was only 3 of us. We would just like mouth it off, and people, we could, and that way we could interplay with the audience. Somebody yells out a song, we could do it right then instead of being regimented. Of course, you can't do that when you're touring, and you're, as an opening act, and we had to get set lists for that. But just that's kind of an example of how we were doing it and how it relates to why there's no album title at this point. I think I've gotten several. The only one I'd really want to say right now is Zebra 5.
Sounds good. Lovely stuff. Well, there's so much to look forward to next year. Obviously, the 50th anniversary, the new album. So what's the best way for fans and for people just finding out about the band to keep in touch with what's going on with Zebra? Well,
there's 2 ways that you can reach our website. We have The Door, THEDOOR.com. We got that a long time ago, obviously. People have been trying to buy that from us for years.
I bet.
We couldn't get zebra.com because the biggest barcode company in the world had gotten it before we did. But we also have zebraband.com. So if you go to zebraband.com or thedoor.com or randyjackson.com, I beat the other Randy Jacksons to it. And so you can go to any of those and go to the Zebra website. And from there, you can click on links that'll get you to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that stuff, you know?
Fantastic stuff, Randy. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing all the special stuff that's going to come out next year. 50 years in the business. Incredible.
Thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me. You know, it's been a pleasure.
And a huge thank you to Randy Jackson for joining me on the podcast. It's always incredible to hear stories from a musician whose music has stood the test of time, and I can't wait to see what Zebra has in store for their 50th anniversary. Now, if this was your first time listening or watching VRP Rocks, then please go back and check out the hundreds of other episodes that I've put out over the years. There's more than 40 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, some huge names from the world of rock, from Steve Vai to Stuart Copeland to Gene Simmons and Lou Gramm, and so many more as well. Just subscribe to VRP Rocks and scroll back through all the episodes. But that's it for this week's episode. I'll be back next Monday with more classic rock conversations. So until then, take care.